Well, hello, Roy. How are you doing today?
I am well, sir.
That's good. So last week, I don't know if you noticed. I didn't notice it till today. I thought it might have happened, but I didn't put our little countdown thing up in time, and it caught us like, "Are you ready to go?" Yeah, we're ready. Okay, we're now. Uh, I almost clicked end stream. uh, miming myself doing that. Like, no, wait. Yeah, but yeah, I was pretty. I was looking at it today from last week's, and I noticed there's about 3 seconds of us talking before it goes into the countdown. So, you know, my producing skills are on point.
Well, that's good to know. I've always been one to push it right up until the break,
Yeah.
like saying all sorts of stuff right before the break. And my co host, when I was on radio, used to go crazy about it, understandably, somewhat. But I just thought I could always squeeze it in before we came out of a break. So that's good to know that potentially can wind up to the masses.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I'll care.
yeah.
I'll totally be bothered by it.
Speaking of things you're bothered by, I made sure to note this that it is Twitter, not X. Roy hates that. So,
I mean, eventually, I suppose that we'll have to give way to the branding of it because perhaps maybe one day more people will recognize it as X than Twitter. Is that the case today?
I would say no.
Me too.
I agree. So, I'm going on vacation tomorrow to Mexico. That's my
That's pretty sick.
yeah.
What are you doing? Are we talking all inclusive? Are we talking
Uh,
little
yeah.
resort stay to any degree, or are you going, like free balling it in Mexico, so to speak?
Not
Finding your
yet.
way.
We're going on a cruise. We're only stopping in Mexico.
Okay.
Um.
Had to
So
get the passports updated for that.
no passports for the cruise.
Really?
Yeah, you don't have to have passports for a cruise. You have to have your birth certificate and socials and all that stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, we are going to get our passports updated because we are going to. Our goal is eventually in the next 5 or so years to do like your friend. Was it Dalton Miller?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not moving to Europe, España, wherever he's at, but
Portugal.
Portugal, same. No, um, but we're looking at Mexico to move because my wife has dual citizenship. Dual
Yeah.
citizenship there. So our goal is after this trip, every trip we take, we're going to visit a different little area and kind of see where we want to go eventually.
Find the spot that you like.
Yep.
You
My
speak Yo hablo español?
¿Dónde es mi tacos? Mi pantalones es muy bueno. No, not at all.
Okay. I was going to say those were a lot of words I knew, but they were also like all words I learned in middle school Spanish when I was required to take it. So, you know, donde está la biblioteca? Like,
Yeah, over there, right next to you.
you nailed it.
Yeah. That's funny. It reminds me. My wife cheated and became a Spanish major. Of course, you don't call an English major they say cheat, but she was a Spanish major, and she found this song. It's the funniest song. You got to remind me. I got to get the video for it. We can play it. It's the Spanish One love song. It is literally a love. It's in a love ballad type, but it's literally just vocabulary from like a college Spanish one class.
Okay, a
So
Spanish one love
love
song.
song,
That
yeah,
Spanish one being the class there. Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
It is hilarious because it's nothing but random vocabulary words, just in a love song, you know. Donde mi está biblioteca, something like, you know.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah. So I need to find that.
Sounds like it could be funny.
It is. It's pretty funny. Especially if you like Spanish. But no, we're gonna. Me and my kids are gonna start taking Spanish classes this year at some point.
Classy
Um,
move.
yeah, so that we can kind of be more familiar with the language. and then we'll start integrating. My wife and I talked about it as we start getting into Spanish classes. We'll start integrating in like certain times of the day, like at the house, we only speak Spanish. So,
Now, you and the kids are going to take Spanish classes together.
mm-hmm.
How?
uh, I'm going to hire a Spanish tutor to teach us.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're going to hire an outside tutor. I mean, I'm
yeah.
thinking like Rosetta Stone, maybe
Uh,
teaching you.
I thought
Uh,
like taking them down to the college and then rolling
that
them or
full,
something.
that full immersion, right? I'm sure there's a couple spots in Dallas you could just take them to on the weekends and
Yeah,
get them fully immersed in the culture, right?
I take them to their mom's house. She don't speak Spanish. She don't speak English.
Like I know for me, my wife being Vietnamese, there's absolutely places in DFW where my wife could take our kids and they'd be fully immersed in Vietnamese. They would not hear one word of English.
Oh yeah, in Arlington, yeah.
You know the spots.
Fantastic food, man. There's one spot in the Vietnamese area in Arlington. I love it. They got the little things in the tables where you cook your little food
Mhm.
right there. If you want, you can go get like the raw meat from the bar. It's like a buffet slash. I don't know. I love it.
Right. Real
Yeah.
popular, these Korean barbecue type places where
Mhm.
you cook your own meat, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of an all you could eat meat place, but you got to cook it yourself. And that, I suppose, paces you. I'm always like, when I go to those types of places, how much meat do I need to eat for you to lose money? And the answer is probably impossible.
More than you can eat.
Like, yeah, exactly. Probably more than your human body is capable of eating. But I used to know this number for CC's Pizza, if you're familiar with that
Uh,
product.
oh
You know,
yes.
back when they charged like $3.99 for all you can eat pizza and a Coke, you needed to eat 2.5 full CC's pizzas for them to lose money on that deal.
Wow. Even when it was like three
3.99
ninety nine. Yeah. God.
for everything. All you can eat pizza and a drink. 2.5 pizzas had to go down for them to lose on that deal.
Hey, my son's in the room with me. You want to throw some f bombs out there, Roy?
I mean, I'd be happy to, but I'm trying. You can tell him I'm trying for
He's
all our
trying.
sakes to not do that. I'm
He's
told
trying.
that YouTube will like flag you too, so you won't get as much like
You got me.
viewership and hits. And you know we care about that.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
big
Big on our.
viewership guys.
Yeah.
Hit that like button, by the way. Good time to mention it if you
Smash it.
haven't already.
Elbow drop.
Smash it, dude.
Smash that up.
Smash it. Smash it
Smash.
so hard that your computer breaks, and then you have to go buy a new one, and then you can watch this over again, start it from that spot, and smash it on your new computer.
There you go. Let us know. We feel that every time you do that. It feels like butterflies in our soul.
I mean,
I think
it's not my soul that's feeling it, brother. That's for sure.
But we have an amazing show, best show ever right now.
And we wouldn't say that if it wasn't true.
We wouldn't, we couldn't legally. YouTube would arrest us. So we have a good show. Sorry, I got the
Elon would
49ers.
arrest us. We couldn't
What?
say that. We couldn't say it on his platform if it wasn't true.
Right. Yeah, they're known for their honesty and stuff. Yeah. What do you think about let's get a little NFL talk. We had a game today. Did you catch any of the Ravens Texans?
I mean, cool. I kind of did. Like, I guess I kind of did. I didn't. I did. I didn't. I took. We bought tickets to a Lego Fest in downtown Dallas today, and so that's what we spent the majority of the day doing this afternoon and evening. I caught some of the game, following it on my phone. Looked like both offenses struggled pretty mightily until the end. CJ Stroud is going to get that Joe Burrow year 2 treatment. I told you last week, I kind of called the victory they stomped out the Browns on. And then unfortunately, like the Ravens are just too good of a team, too complete a team. But that Texans team is coming.
Yeah.
They're coming and they're coming hard. And no one wants to see Texans coming hard.
No. That's what she said too. By the way.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't get all happy pants about the Eagles being out of it. I suppose it's relief, if anything, that they are eliminated. We talked about this a little bit, but I suppose it's more relief than anything, but I don't take any solace in the fact that like, oh, we made it as far as they did. That's not the bar. That's not the bar. And if it
Right.
is to you, that's like embarrassing that it's fallen that low, that
It's
we're
also
celebrating making it further than the Eagles or looking better than the Eagles late, or that our franchise isn't in as disarray as the Eagles appear to be.
doubt
That
that.
is not the standard.
Yeah. Well, it's not the standard. I guess it's more for me. It's more. I'm glad the Eagles lost because I don't just sit on Twitter and listen to Eagles fans run their mouths.
Yep.
Um, and they've
Yep.
been really silent, which is good
Totally
because
fair.
my goodness, Twitter is just a. I have really worked hard to make. I guess my end of the. I run the podcast Twitter. It's usually me, or it's always me. Um, and I've done my best for the feed to only be sports stuff. I try to get rid of anything political, anything nonsensical, anything just. But man, I swear, sports is just as sports debates are more toxic at times than political debates.
In some cases, you're right.
It's
I mean, depending on the topic, you're absolutely right.
I got into
Um,
an argument with a guy on Twitter because it was when it was the year Diggs intercepted 11 interceptions, so 2 years ago. And I commented on something about Diggs being I think he got selected All Pro, and then an Atlanta fan didn't like my comment about Diggs being, and I put he's among the best, and I'm very careful about how I put things. I will never say this is the best player in the NFL because that stuff fluctuates and turns. Anyway, I made sure to put Diggs. Congratulations, Diggs is among the best cornerbacks in the NFL maybe we've ever seen. Had one of the best seasons we've ever seen for a corner. And this guy, Atlanta fan, what about my guy? It's always what about my guy. So what's his name? That corner they have, not McLaren. You know what I'm talking about?
I
Real good
don't.
corner.
I don't.
So it
I mean,
basically boiled down
good
to
Falcons corner.
Falcons corner. Yes, they have one
Okay.
good. They drafted it. Remember, they traded up before
So D,
Dallas. They
D.
jumped
Alford, Mike Hughes, Clark Phillips, Trey Flowers, Jeff Okuda,
no cornerback. AJ.
cornerback. Those are
Yeah.
all. I just listed a bunch of cornerbacks.
Let's see. I'm looking at let's see but anyway, it's always that my guy.
AJ Terrell.
Yeah, AJ Terrell.
There you go.
Why not AJ Terrell? And I just put, AJ Terrell didn't, blah blah blah. No one even throws to him. And my point back was, and then we just went back and forth, and basically, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, it got real toxic, and he got like, man, I'm going to hunt you down, and okay.
I mean, look,
Here's an address to I'll do shit like that. They'll DM you an address. It's a neutral site, but show up.
that's the most absurd. I mean, if it gets to that point, you just got to mute them and move on. Like the mute button is your friend. The mute button and the block button will save you a lot of angst in
Yeah.
my world. And
Well,
you'll never miss it. You'll
mhm.
never miss it. You won't think one thing about it ever again if you mute that individual and take them off of your timeline.
Yeah.
Having said that, I know there's a lot of consternation. There's been a lot of battles back and forth about like where we stand on the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people defending them. There's not a lot of people defending this. They decide that Mike McCarthy gets to roll on.
Yeah.
No new extension on the horizon is the latest news from Adam Schefter after he kind of broke the news. I think David Moore kind of broke the news personally. He
Yeah.
didn't come out and say it, but what he did was write an article in the Dallas Morning News basically.
So Roy has frozen a little
Just a
bit.
second.
There you go.
When it comes to how the Cowboys feed information to the media and how the media finds out about specific things, I do think there's something there that perhaps breadcrumbs or whatever you want to say that led David Moore to write that article ultimately to almost lay the groundwork for the preparation of the fan base and bringing Mike McCarthy back.
Yeah.
And I know I said I didn't think it was likely that it would happen. I guess in the end, you could say they took a step back from Mike McCarthy by not giving him a contract extension. Had he achieved what was expected, what was the benchmark of 2023, which was an NFC championship game, then he'd have gotten that contract extension, as would have Dak Prescott, who we'll talk about in a second. But for now, you can at least say they took a half a step back from Mike McCarthy by not giving him an extension beyond this year. I'd have moved on personally. I
So
don't I don't know where you are. I'd have moved on from it though.
let me ask you a question. I think having some time to digest it. So I got a question for you. I'll ask in a second. Let me answer yours. But I think they kind of had to, like, who? None of the big names are showing up. Jerry seems very reluctant to hire these wonder kids and go out and bring in somebody like that. It's, who are you going to grab? You're going to go grab another retread? You're going to bring in Ron Rivera? You're going to go money whip Bill Cowart out of the studio? I mean, what are you going to do? It's. I don't think you're going to get any better than Mike McCarthy right now. So it makes sense. I don't like it, but it makes sense. But my question to you is, Dan Quinn, if he leaves, which it appears he's still a hot candidate for a head coaching job, are they able to bring in a Wink Martindale, a big defensive coordinator name with a lame duck head coach?
I mean, absolutely they will if they want one. I don't care what people say about, like, lame duck coach doesn't apply in Dallas. Why? Because we've seen in the past that Jerry and Steven treat assistant coaches better than head coaches at times.
Yeah.
They will absolutely consider a guy to be in waiting as an assistant coach, pay him better than any other assistant coach in the NFL, and keep him around, even if the head coach doesn't get the job done. So, to me, to that specific question, like, I have no worries about if they decide to want to bring in an outside individual, what that would look like. What I question, I guess my two thoughts on it would be, A, are we definitely sure Dan Quinn's going to get a head coaching job somewhere else in the NFL right now?
Mm-hmm.
And B, what would they do if he didn't? I think they'll promote from within. Like, they tend to allow guys to rise. I think they'll probably promote from within for that spot. Just move a guy up into that position, so they don't necessarily have to sell a high profile, coordinator on that spot. But I am almost more interested by what potentially happens if Dan Quinn doesn't get a head coaching job. They couldn't possibly run this same coaching staff back head to toe, right? Certainly couldn't run back both coordinators and the head coach.
Well, the head coach is one of the coordinators.
Yeah. So the offensive coordinator and the head coach are already back. I think Dan Quinn's probably out of a job if he doesn't get a head coaching job.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've heard that they're willing to run it back. I've heard a name. I forget one of the names, but Al Harris is a name they've talked about that could be potential promoted within.
I mean, Joe Witt Jr. is, I think, probably the guy that would be the first. Their secondary
again.
Joe Witt Jr.
Oh, yeah, that's the name I heard. Yeah,
and I think he's their passing game, like, defensive coordinator as well. So, I mean, he already has some familiarity with the scheme and the terminology and familiarity with the players. He would be the first candidate, I think, internally that they would look to. And then from there, I guess the rest of it to me doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah. I have this feeling that Dan Quinn doesn't get a job, he's gonna come back. That
think about that. Think about selling that to this fan base.
He doesn't
who's already pissed. And basically any defenders that were left on the side of, and I was one of them, on the side that said Dak can get it done, this team can get it done. I can't say anything counter to an individual who is convinced that Dak Prescott or Mike McCarthy will not be able to get it done. I mean, I kind of am a little bit convinced that in today's day and age, Mike McCarthy's deficiencies are too great to be able to get it done. But I also agree with your statement that I don't think they can go out and do better than him right this moment. I would have liked them to go after Bill Belichick personally. I understand why it wouldn't have worked if he's still of the mind that he's got to shop for the groceries. And I don't necessarily know if he is. I think he respects the Cowboys and how they do it, and Will McClay and his personnel decision making. But obviously that's down the road now. Like, that's not going to happen. Mike McCarthy is the guy, and Bill Belichick's going to get a head coaching job somewhere, so he's not going to be available the next time around. Right. That's what I think they're missing out on, that opportunity, when it's staring them right in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard, I don't know, maybe it's a tweet, maybe an Adam Schefter or something tweet that Belichick, that there was a reach out. Have you heard this? I don't know if
I haven't.
That's what I hate about Twitter. I read it, it's on my timeline, but you got so many bots and so many just irreputable places.
There's a couple of these really crappy like aggregators, like just 3 that I can name off the top of my head, like ML Football, JPA Football, and NFL Rooms.
And then Dom Clivern and whatever.
They'll send stuff out. They'll get us a lot of stuff out there that is legitimate from other sources. They're aggregating sources, but they will absolutely just throw S against the wind. And it gets out there so quickly and gets around so quickly that there are articles being written about it on Yardbarker and Barstool and all these places as if this rumor is legitimate. There's then someone that repeats it on television, and now the rumor is legitimized because the individual on television is corroborating the report that was started by the aggregator, like, Twitter account. I mean, Ari Myrov or whatever his name is, I mean, he does a little bit better of a job. He tries to like keep it, but I mean, he's still just like a kid. He doesn't have like a journalist degree or something to that effect. None of these aggregators are maintaining any type of standard as to their sources or sourcings. And yeah,
they all look the same. There's those 3-4 that they'll put out 4 things within seconds of each other that all look identical.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
But they can make a lot of money on this version of Twitter.
We're going to start doing that. That's what our podcast is going to be. We're just going to say, yeah. So Roy is taking a break.
No, I was throwing it. I need to move the trash can closer.
Okay.
Forgive me.
But yeah, I had heard, I don't remember if it was through a reputable source, one of those, that there was a reach out from the Cowboys to Belichick's people, and there was no interest from him. I wonder, and I say that because I wonder if something was reached out, if there was a reach out, and if Belichick would have said he was in, would he be in? Do you think if Belichick said, I want to come to Dallas and do it and get my, get the record and try to,
I mean, I guess that's why I don't believe the report about like what coach who understands the history of the NFL to the extent that Bill Belichick does and appreciates it the way that he does. What coach would say no to the Dallas Cowboys organization? Like, honestly, to be a part of that, not even discussing the fact that certainly if that job would have come available this offseason, certainly would have been the best situation you could have imagined from a personnel standpoint out of any of the coaching jobs that are out there. Like, even I think the Chargers as well in that conversation, the Cowboys are in a better spot. I don't know to what degree there was contact, if there was any contact with Belichick's people, but I kind of think that maybe the Joneses laid low on that. I'd be interested to know where that came from and if there was any legitimacy to that. Maybe down the road we'll find out.
And maybe, and again, it's sometimes it's hard to in my head if I don't write it down or if I don't note it. Is that legitimate? Yeah. So, um, yeah. So Mike back, Quinn. I have a feeling he's coming back. But the big question, number 4, he's obviously coming back. How do they proceed with him? He can't carry a $60 million cap hit next year, can he? Do they have to extend him? Do they have to? How do they kick the can down the road, or do they like if he carries that cap hit without an extension? What does that mean? Does that mean they're blowing this team up after? I mean,
I don't think it has to. I'm not so convinced that it has to. Now, I get the argument that he can't carry a $60 million cap hit if you're honestly trying to compete.
yeah,
Like, I do get that from a roster construction standpoint. And so from that argument's sake, like, I don't really have a counter other than at some point you're going to need to bite the bullet. Why not do it now, coinciding with Mike McCarthy's contract? Like, here's the case I would lay out. And I get the argument. My friend Bobby Belt, said on the radio this week that if you don't sign Dak Prescott to a franchise, to a long-term extension, that he's gone at the end of the season. And I don't necessarily think I agree with that, simply because when it's time to get paid, for the next quarterback to get paid, they're getting the best contract available. They're getting the next largest deal you've ever seen.
yeah,
Winning in the playoffs is inconsequential to that equation. How do I know? Because Matt Stafford got it before he ever won in the playoffs. Because Justin Herbert just got it here recently without ever having won in the playoffs. Guys have gotten it without having done anything. Deshaun Watson got what he got without ever having won in the playoffs. It doesn't matter when the time comes up for Dak Prescott to get paid. He will be paid the highest contract in the NFL for that position in that moment.
yeah,
If that's this offseason, it's going to happen. If it's after this season ends, and let's say, like, paint a rosy picture where Dak Prescott goes and wins a Super Bowl and everybody is now clamoring for his services. Are you telling me that if the Cowboys can offer the same contract that anybody else in the league can, that he's going to say no to the most recognizable franchise that he has benefited by being a part of for the last 8 years? There's no doubt in my mind that Dak Prescott doesn't make $100 million off of the field in endorsements if he's not the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. And his people know that too. If they can offer the same dollar figure, which will be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, regardless of whether they sign him this offseason or next, why not wait? The only argument to not waiting is that $60 million cap hit, in my mind, because at this point, it's only the average quarterback contract per year on average has risen by about 2.5% every time a new one is signed. So if we assume that 3 quarterbacks will potentially sign new deals between now and next offseason, right? 3 to 4. And I think that's like a fair assessment. I can't maybe rattle them off all at the top of my head, but I think 3 to 4 is probably like a fair number. Then it's going to rise about 10% from where it is right now. Right now, the highest paid quarterback is getting paid about $55 million a year. Well, what's the difference between 55 and 60? It's next to nothing. It's $5 million a year, but it's next to nothing in the scheme of things.
well, yeah,
And so that's where I say, if I were to make an argument, now again, I don't think this is likely to happen. I'm not predicting this to happen. I fully expect, in fact, the Cowboys to sign him to a long-term deal so that they can lower that cap number, kick it down the road a little bit, and compete better in 2024. But if it were my choice, I would lay it out. And I don't think they're losing anything by doing so, other than their ability to compete in 2024. But on the flip side, you can then make the argument to Dak Prescott and say, hey, this is what life was like for you and how difficult it was to win for you when you have a $60 million cap hit. Is there anything we can do with that long-term number, knowing what you're going to make off in the offseason, knowing what you're going to make off the field as a Cowboys quarterback, as the most recognizable player on the most recognizable franchise in sports around the world? If you can recognize the value in that, then hey, then you should be a Cowboy for life. Now, I know agents aren't like going to hear that stuff, but that's the argument I'm laying out. Tell me if that's crazy.
Um, it makes sense. In one respect, yes, it makes a lot of sense, but I think the cap hit is just too big of a thing to even consider. What was the Dan and Jake, the Dumb Zone, earlier this week, and they had one of their agent, I forget the name, but they had an NFL agent on there that they had made friends with, who spoke about it.
I mean,
And
that's Joel Corey, right? They have Joel
yeah,
Corey on.
I
He
think that's
wrote the article for CBS, which detailed that 2.5% rise for every quarterback that, like, on average, as their contract is raised, they're getting an average increase of 2%, or 2.5%. But yeah, I mean, Corey is incredible with the numbers, and I mean, he is right that a $60 million cap hit on a salary cap of 240 some odd million as to what it's projected to be, that's literally 20% of your cap. Like, no one wins with that. No one does that.
yeah.
It's
But
fair.
when he was on the Dumb Zone, his prediction was Dak will sign an extension this offseason, and it will be the biggest contract in NFL history, NFL history.
Yeah.
And it might even, rival with guarantees and stuff. Because they really asked him, like, do you think he'll get guarantees? Do you think he'll get a fully guaranteed contract like Watson? And he didn't think that, but he was, yeah, it's
No
gonna,
one will. No
yeah,
one will again. The owners got together, like, they colluded on that one, and they agreed that will never happen again. We will
right,
never allow an agent to negotiate because look at, but also, I mean, turn around and make the argument. Like, they just picked a guy off the street that performed better than the guy they gave all that guaranteed money to, and are still on the hook to give that guaranteed money to.
yep.
Awful decision.
Oh yeah, and especially what they only put $1 million on it last year, so he wouldn't be fined as much, or he wouldn't lose as much for game
Mhm.
checks. It's Man, they really bent over backwards to make sure that a person with 28 sexual assault charges, accusations, not charges, accusations,
Ooh,
uh,
that was
got
close. We're not talking about Trump here now.
no,
These
those are
are just
charges.
accusations. Now, these are
Accusation,
not
yeah, yeah.
credible.
Semantics. My words aren't that great. I'm gonna learn Spanish this year, so don't words. But yeah, they really rolled out the red carpet for that. It seemed like I mean I would have. I think someone like a why am I blanking on his name? Jackson, Deshaun Jackson is I dare
Watson.
rather no Jackson in Baltimore. It's not Deshaun.
Oh, Lamar Jackson.
Lamar. Why am I getting names? See, words, bad words. I would have given him. I think he would be more worthy of a fully guaranteed contract, like a Burrow or a Mahomes. It was like you said, a guy with no playoff success, with some success. I don't want to say it was bad, but man, that's desperation. You could have got a lot. I mean, heck, Baker's doing better than he is.
Yeah. It's
So
yeah, that'll never happen again. But all that being said, I mean, that's the most likely of scenarios.
yeah,
All what Joe Corey laid out. My argument, I want to, because I've had people come at me about it, and it's not something that I'm expecting to happen. In fact, I quite the opposite. I think it's like has a 10% chance of happening. It's just I am at that point now. It's not necessarily even an original idea to let him play out his contract and be in the final year of it. I'm at that point now where I think a lot of people are, which is if you I mean, if you're certain that it's going to go a certain way at the end of the season in the playoffs, no matter what the regular season outcome is, then that is a point where I can advocate calling for a change, even if it means stepping backwards at that point.
yeah,
Because There's a lot of room for the Cowboys to get worse fast than better. A lot more room to do that,
Well,
considering all the quarterbacks that came between Troy Aikman and Tony Romo and Dak Prescott.
yes. Oh yeah, and it can well, because I would still say, despite their loss, they're amongst the best teams in the NFC. Despite their playoff loss, regular
They
season,
are.
however you count the regular season, roster wise, I think we agree on that.
But
But
next year's a whole new year on that. That's the other thing
yeah,
too. Like next year's a whole new set of circumstances. No guarantees that they'll be in that same position.
right, yeah. I mean, no guarantees. I just yes, I think you get rid of Dak, you start over. Because say what you will about Dak, say what you will about his playoff performances and some of the stinkers he puts out there are not 32 quality NFL starters in the world. Dak is one of the very few quality NFL starters that exist. One of maybe 15. So and you admitted it, but they get rid of Dak, it's back to square one. It's finding a young quarterback, and it's I just think it's going to be they get rid of Dak, we're going to be parading Baker in here. We're going to be parading I don't know, Flacco probably be gone by then, but or completely done by then, but it's just
I
I
could
could
see that. I totally can see that, and it's an argument I've made to the group text I'm in of people who have already for a year or two been ready to move on from Dak Prescott, just convinced he's the guy that can't get it done. Like I understand, you're absolutely right. If you move on from Dak Prescott, it completely means rebuilding, and it means a lot of the pieces that you think are like mainstays of this roster may not be here. I understand all that to be the case, which is why I fully expect that not to happen. I fully expect them to try to reload with Dak Prescott, give him a long term extension, and see if they can make it work with the pieces around him because it's always easier to fix all those pieces than it is to find that one guy that can take your team to the next level. Because even as the Chiefs are seeing, like that one guy is still incapable of necessarily doing it all on his own.
yeah. Um yeah, and that's always the point, and that's what frustrates me. And it's that argument that Dak can't take you to the promised land. One quarterback every year can do it. Now, there are layers to the argument. Well, he hasn't even ever gotten past a division round, whatever. But to sit and say Dak is somehow inferior as an NFL talent as a quarterback, and I'm not saying you are, when only one quarterback wins it every year, and heck, Mahomes has been there like 3 times in the last 5 years. Um, it's hard to say that Dak is a failure or hasn't lived to expectations when, man, that's so hard to get to that final game. It's so hard to win your last game
I
in
mean,
the
it's hard to get
NFL.
to that final game. I agree, but at the same time, of quarterbacks who have had at least 5 appearances in the playoffs, no one has as many losses as he does, basically.
Mhm.
So that, I mean, in that period of time, he's 2-5 in the playoffs. You look at his playoff numbers, and they're relatively pedestrian. If you whittle that down even further and look at the first half of a lot of those games, because as we know, having watched them, that game against the Packers was way over at halftime, even though Dak went on to throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Despite the 2 interceptions, we know that game against the San Francisco 49ers was way over, even though they happened to crawl their way back and even come within a score as the game and the score winded down, right as the clock winded down. We know it wasn't really that close. And in the first half of those games, Dak has not been pedestrian. He's been horrendous. I don't know what to attribute that to. And I don't want to say that his entire body of work boils down to what he has done in 7 playoff games. Like, I totally agree with everything you're saying, but at the same time, I've run out of defensible position. Like
So
you're on the cliff, right? And they
I
have pushed and you're holding the shield strong, and you are now being pushed to the very edge of the cliff where your feet have no more room. Dak Prescott has no more room, really.
He doesn't, and I agree. Yeah, but there's something I noticed. There's something I've been noodling with a thought, and work with me here. This Dallas team,
You
especially
don't say
this year,
noodling.
I've been noodling. It's a word I've been working. Been working in the repertoire. Makes me forget the Baltimore quarterback's name. It's one information in and one out. So the idea, and I've been thinking about this team a little bit this year, and I've noticed, and it's happened in almost every one of their losses. If the defense cannot keep the other team's offense from getting out ahead, this team can't win. Every game, it seems like, even games they like, think of the Washington. I think the Washington game, week 18 game, and the Packers game are really good games to look at this Dallas team of who they are. That Washington game, they win 42-17, like that. You look at that, and like they blew them out of the water, and they did. But that game was it tied or close? It was really at halftime.
Yeah.
Dallas didn't get going, and Dallas never gets going until the second half of a game. And you're making that point, and that's what made me think of this was. So yes, Dak get off to slow starts in every game, but when it gets to the playoffs, where it's much more competitive and you're playing better teams consistently, I think there's a bigger failure than just Dak, because the way this team seems to be built is if the defense cannot shut down the other team's offense to give Dallas's offense time to get into rhythm, there's no way this team can win a game. So, yeah, partly on Dak for not being able to get into rhythm sooner, because that is on him, but also partly on coaching, I guess.
Oh, very much. I mean, look, all
Heavily
inclusive,
on
very
coaching.
much coaching, like the defense, all of it. But at the same time, like, I mean, it all works against it. It all works in confluence with one another. That's why, this week we got to deal with the reaction and the fallout of CeeDee Lamb's mother getting on Facebook and saying Dak ain't it. Micah Parsons' brother saying that the Cowboys fans are going to miss him when he's gone. I think people need to be careful when they're just aggregating family conversations and assuming that that's how like a player feels, because hey, it's family, he must talk to them and tell them that. Like, there's family members that I barely talk to, and I'm not saying that's like my mom or my pops, but I mean, they definitely don't know all the inner workings of or the thoughts of what I'm thinking at a given basis. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that CeeDee Lamb feels that way about Dak Prescott or otherwise. But again, these are just like cracks in the Cowboys canvas that are always occurring, and kind of always just like feeding into the conversation. And I'm not, again, they're not going to move on from Dak Prescott. We don't even really need to like go on that further, because they're not going to move on from him. But it's worth asking if they should or not.
Yes. And I follow along, and I think there's a lot of reasons they should and a lot of reasons they shouldn't. It's been sports heavy one. I know we're trying to keep these about 30 to 45 minutes. We're running up. So only other topic I had was a local news topic that will still be I think relevant.
Well, you save that for next week, when I also want to talk about the darts that Fort Worth officers are now integrating into their lives. Yeah, that's right. We got a fun segment coming for you. And we'll do like local and national. We talked about doing that, right? Local and national stories. Next week will be a little bit easier because, we're not draft nerds. Nothing against draft nerds. Love draft nerds. Respect draft nerds. I'm just not going to do that kind of work.
I tried 1 year, 2 drafts ago, to really get into it. And I did my homework. Our friend Kevin Turner gave me some pointers and notes and kind of some on how to actually like evaluate tape. So I did that. So I kind of do it a little bit still, but no, yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to my boys KT, JC, Jeff Kavanaugh over there, the Freak. I know they were like late nights with Brian Broaddus for years on end, as they would just go on and on about draft picks. Them and David Hellman, who's now with Fox Sports. And yeah, I mean, cool to see that stuff going on. Like, mad respect to it.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I like watching all 22 stuff, and I like breaking down that type of thing. I like seeing the inner workings of like individual players and talents. I just to me, you know, give me the guys that the Cowboys get. Give me the guys that the Cowboys get. I'll get intimately familiar with them and their skill set. And sure, like there's guys I suppose you could look around and suggest that maybe they go trade for or otherwise, but like I don't hear any of that stuff come up. We all figure out about these guys when they get to the team. Like, might as well wait until they get there. That's my 2 cents on draft stuff.
That makes sense, especially if you're really locked into one team or you're locked. Yeah. So,
Bingo.
but let's go ahead and let's call it an episode. I think it's good. We don't need to improve
Chipotle
on
this bitch.
protection. What's that?
Wrap it.
Wrap it. Wrap
Chipotle
it.
this. I'm gonna make that a thing, and then we're gonna make them a sponsor.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Roy, as always. It's nice talking with you. Thank you for those who watched and are going to watch. Until we see you again, stay above